Hey all, so another Spotlight with Context video here, and today we are talking about Shocker. Shocker is a really interesting champion, I think primarily aimed at Battlegrounds, but definitely going to have some other utility, and he's just very straightforward. Where you should use him, he's going to be really, really good at it, and I think he's going to be a lot of fun for a lot of people. He's not terribly complicated, he is a little unorthodox, and he's very effective. So just going to go ahead and dive straight into the strengths. Like the spotlight says, Shocker's a simple man with simple goals, deal big damage. His entire kit is built around a single heavy attack as the cash out. Everything else is just ramp. It's all about the big heavy attack. This does have some distinct advantages. It means that if you are dealing with somebody like an Anti-Venom or a Sasquatch or somebody who is healing back up as you try to take them down, normally that might mean that you need more damage. But the fact that Shocker is all about one big hit means that often when you do things correctly, your opponent will not have an opportunity to heal. He also can get to this fairly quickly, and so opponents that get more dangerous over time, he's pretty darn good for that as well. Additionally, he is really, really good at the whole stunning thing. His stuns ignore the opponent's limber because he removes that mastery, and he himself also reduces the duration of stuns in a way that stacks with limber, and so it is very, very difficult for stun debuffs to shut him down, and his pretty much always work on the opponent. Additionally, he can throw a lot of specials for a tech champion. It's not like Hyperion levels or anything, he doesn't have Mystic Dispersion, but especially in short fights, his first special can be cheaper or even free, and his special 3 gives him a really strong Energize, and so if you just need to throw a lot of individual specials for whatever reason, he can do that pretty darn well. Now we talked about why all of your damage in a single hit does have some advantages. It also has some disadvantages. If you're facing somebody like Magneto, you probably are going to have a bad time because that whole damage cap thing is going to catch him here. This is also going to be a problem against somebody like future Ant-Man or just anyone else who limits how much you can do all in one go. Additionally, you do need to land heavies. And you are usually all aiming it for a single heavy. If there's something about the fight that you are taking that requires you to throw individual heavies more often, or if you're facing somebody who is fully stun immune, then you might have trouble charging up that heavy or just landing it safely at all, and that is going to be a huge bummer for your damage. Shocker has a very interesting set of immunities here, in that he is immune to shock effects overall, so both passives and debuffs, and concussion debuffs. So, if you are facing somebody like Mr. Sinister, and he throws that special too, it just will not apply. This is a fairly niche immunity, but when it comes up, it can keep you from having all of your abilities turned off, so it's potentially very powerful. We also already mentioned he reduces the duration of incoming stuns by 50%. Combine this with maxed out Limber's 48% reduction, and you are looking at almost a 100% reduction in the length of any incoming stuns. Now, if your opponent has the Stupefy mastery, they still can have some stun duration, but most of the time you're going to be able to recover quickly enough to get out of there or to parry yourself. And if you are in quest content where there is no Stupefy, or maybe in incursions, and you're looking at something like encroaching stun, well then this becomes that much better and basically is stun immunity. We also already mentioned he removes the opponent's Limber Mastery, so you don't have to worry about, is this 3-second stun always going to be a 3-second stun? And then finally, Shocker cannot land critical hits. This is a fairly common tech ability. It's good at avoiding the punishments that some mutants have for it. It can also have some advantages in flying under the radar of more generic punishments for big hits like Backblast or maybe Rage. And Unlike some of the other techs that can't deal crits, Shocker doesn't replace that damage immediately with some kind of debuff or instant passive effect. Instead, he can just cut through armor with an amount of armor penetration equal to his critical rating. So the way this works is that his critical rating is about 26%. Most champions have an armor rating somewhere around 20. That means that he will treat them as though they have no armor. But if he's dealing with somebody like Odin, who might be sitting at more around 50%, well, he's not going to be able to get through all of that. And so about half of that armor rating will still apply and reduce his damage by that much. So keep that in mind when picking his matchups, but for a lot of his targets, this is going to be plenty. So the core of his kit is building up these Vibro-Shock Charges. They normally have a max of 100, like you can see here, and you build them just by landing lights or mediums. You also build them while being hit, but most of the time that's going to be a defensive ability. When you get above 50 Vibro-Shock Charges, then you are unblockable while dashing forward. This gives you some nice safety in playing aggressively, but there is a slight cost. If you end up needing to use this to break through your opponent's block and or to avoid getting parried, then you are going to lose 20 charges. And then, mostly a defensive measure, if Shocker is struck while unblockable, then he loses 50 Vibro-Shock Charges. This is how you can stop him from basically continuing to ramp up and get scarier and more unblockable by just intercepting him or otherwise hitting him while he's unblockable. And that matters particularly because while he's at that same 50 plus Vibro-Shock Charges, he can auto-block special attacks. And so if you need to throw a special against a defending Shocker, you're going to want to make sure that you hit him while unblockable, reduce him below that threshold, and then throw your special. This also means that an attacking Shocker has yet another safety net while at this threshold, because he can charge in and try and hit an opponent that might be blocking him. He can also potentially play risky and try and do that while the opponent has power, because if they throw that special, he will auto-block it. Again, using either of these safety nets does have a cost as far as your ramp up, but it is still nice as far as flexibility for playstyle. On his medium attack specifically, he has a scaling chance both to remove the opponent's prowess effects and to inflict a stun. This stun is fairly short, but because it does ignore the opponent's limber mastery, you can use it to then immediately start another combo and keep your ramp going. But because it maxes out at 25% chance to apply, you do kind of have to pay attention and see if it lands and then notice that to keep going. Additionally, against somebody like Sauron or Toad, you might have to start off kind of carefully because you won't have that high a chance to remove their prowess. But once you get going, you'll be pretty easily turning their kits off. Now, the heavy attack, like we said, is the core of his kit. Charging his heavy attack is going to very quickly consume his Vibro-Shock Charges, and you can charge it all the way until you use all of them. Once you do run out of charges, it is going to auto-release the heavy attack for you, but you don't have to worry about the animation not lasting long enough to do that. And then the final hit is going to gain an absolute ton of attack rating for every Vibro-Shock Charge consumed. If I'm remembering correctly, this is something like 75-80% of his base attack. His attack just gets absolutely monstrous. This is kind of like Masacre's Special 2 into block levels of attack, and it does really, really well. Now remember, he cannot crit, which might seem like a downside at first, but it also means that you can predict exactly how much damage this hit is going to do once you get used to him, and it makes him very reliable. Moving on to his special attacks, the special one is primarily there to ramp. You get a stun debuff some of the time, and when you land it, you can then keep comboing and building charges further. It can be passively unblockable. Using this to break block does not cost you any charges, so you don't have to worry about that. On defense, this is also the special that you're going to want to punish because it counts as striking him while unblockable and can remove those charges. And then this special also gives you 25 charges when it ends. So, like I said, this is your primary ramp special. You throw this when you need more charges. The special 2, on the other hand, is going to be your cash out special. Because while it itself doesn't do a lot of damage, it's going to place a solid physical vulnerability passive and a stun passive on the opponent, and these last a good long time if you have a lot of Vibro-Shock charges. That is, of course, tuned to allow you to then fully charge your heavy and release it. Now, these effects cannot be prevented by ability accuracy reduction, but they are removed once the opponent is struck 3 times. So that means that you can safely run in and charge your heavy after a medium to close the distance, but you can't just combo the opponent and then start charging your heavy. Even if you go in for a medium, and then charge the heavy, this means that you can lose the physical vulnerability passive before the final hit. So you really just only want to do a single medium to close the distance, then charge the heavy. This is, however, the only part of the kit that's likely to ever give you an opening long enough to fully charge his heavy when you have a lot of charges. So, like I said, this is the big payout. Now, the special 3 is for when you have some time and you really need to ramp up, because this is going to give you a 100% energized passive until the next time you reach 2 bars of power. So that's doubling your combat power rate almost until you get all the way to 2 bars. Not until you fill 2 bars, but until you reach 2 bars, which means that you keep that energized passive if you just keep spamming special 1s. So you can throw this, get that energized, get your special 1s twice as fast as normal, build charges that way, and then only once you are maxed out, finally build to 2 bars of power, lose the energize, and throw your special 2 to set up your heavy. And you're going to have more runway than normal to do that, because while the energize is active, you can stack charges up to 150 instead of 100. So, signature ability, whenever Shocker is stunned or the opponent gains a prowess, he just gains 3 Vibro-Shock charges. This part does not scale, so you just get this at Sig 1. This also means that a defending Shocker is going to ramp when parried, so you have to keep that in mind, but this is going to make him significantly better against somebody like Toad or Sauron, or even Kitty Pryde, who is stacking those prowess effects and just feeding his kit. Additionally, his first special attack in each fight costs up to 100% less power. This starts off at a 10% reduction, but when you have him max sig, it is literally free. You can throw a special 1, and then if you're above 50 charges, immediately throw another unblockable special 1, and then you can wail on the opponent and build up to your special 2. So this makes his ramp up significantly faster in short fights like Battlegrounds, and is pretty important for maximizing him there. Moving on to Synergies. With Punisher and Classic Spider-Man, he basically has a pseudo-taunt. So while above 50 charges, defenders are just more likely to activate their special attacks. You don't have to land a debuff for this, you don't have to be close to them or apply anything to them. They're just always more likely as long as he's above that threshold. With some of the other Sinister Six and Daredevil, you have Insidious, which gives these Synergy champions critical resistance and then doubled against Spider-Verse heroes. This looks like a relatively small amount, but with the way Diminishing Returns plays out, this can be a pretty chunky amount of critical resistance. Some of these characters are already fairly tanky. I particularly like the effect this has on Mysterio, because giving Mysterio crit resistance makes it easier to use his special 1 to not only reflect damage on the opponent, but also to heal from it, since you can go net positive if you have recovery. With Ant-Man and Black Cat, you have this Thief synergy, no safe is safe. Ant-Man is going to do a little bit extra damage on his special 1, Black Cat gets access to guaranteed crits when she steals the calling card, and Shocker just hits harder while unblockable, which is particularly nice for his mediums and special 1s. And then Homecoming Crasher, this one is getting speculation because there's a coming soon synergy. But for the champions we have right now, you're getting medium attacks inflict a damage over time debuff. They're not terribly strong, but this is extra damage for all of them, and some of these have utility. Shocker gets shocks, Stark Enhanced Spider-Man gets ruptures, and Vulture gets disintegrations. And then for this beautifully named one with Symbiote Spider-Man, it's going to give Shocker access to a Cowardice. If he's unduped, this would make him better against Kitty Pryde since she couldn't gain any prowess. If he's duped, I actually wouldn't use this. But if you are planning on part of your fight strategy being auto-blocking specials, then this is going to make those specials less potent into your block, and so it would be quite nice. And then Symbiote Spider-Man gets access to a True Strike buff, which, as a reminder, ignores armor and resistances when you're landing your hits, and also prevents auto-block and evade. So, pretty nice piece of utility there. And that's pretty much it for Shocker. Like I said, he's a very straightforward character. There's some nuance to figuring out exactly how many charges you need to kill something, but pretty much all of his kit is aimed at that one decision, and once you learn how to play him, it's pretty easy to reliably do that one thing, and he's good at it. Like the spotlight says, he is quite good at solving the all-too-common problem of the opponent having too much health. So I hope y'all are looking forward to Shocker. I think he's going to be a great addition to the tech class. He's very different than a lot of what we've seen recently. Let me know in the comments what you're most excited about, and until next time, thanks so much for watching, and take care.